Good morning, it's January 14th. This is To My Liberal Friends. Well, today the Senate begins holding hearings on the Trump cabinet nominees. Democrats will do everything they can to derail some of the nominees, while others are expected to cruise right through. But you can be assured that Democrats will use their opportunity to score as many political points as possible. Republicans have 53 votes in the Senate. Now that number is going to drop to 51 once J.D. Vance is sworn in as Vice President, Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. I would expect the governor of Ohio to quickly name a successor, bringing the number back to 52. That replacement will be at a small disadvantage, having not had the opportunity to meet with the nominees or participate in some of the hearings. Governor Mike DeWine will have to make the choice. Right now, the leading candidates are Jane Timken, a Harvard-educated attorney who is the Ohio Republican Party chair, and surprisingly, Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, if I were a betting man, I would put my money on Timken, since she's closer to DeWine. But if Trump puts his thumb on the scale, it could force DeWine to choose Ramaswamy. The overriding factor has to be who can win the seat in the next general election, and that's why I think Timken is the favorite. Now, there are three other dark horses out there in Ohio, but I don't see them getting the nod. They're Lieutenant Governor John Husted, who I think intends to run for governor in 2026, so he'd put himself out of the race. You have Secretary of State Frank LaRose, who's a solid MAGA guy, but he might be too conservative to win the special election, especially if Sherrod Brown were to run again. And finally, there's Ohio Attorney General David Yost, but I don't see him getting named. And I expect DeWine to name the next senator before the end of the week, and that would allow the choice to be sworn in the day of the inauguration, bringing the Republicans back to 52. The same issue is being faced by Governor DeSantis down in Florida, who has to replace Marco Rubio. If sources are to believe, the leading candidate is the current Attorney General of Florida, Ashley Moody. I think this is a good intelligence because it serves DeSantis well in his own political world. And once again, I think this decision will be done quickly, and the number of Republicans will be back at 53. Well, moving back to the nominees, the name that jumps up first is having any problems is Pete Hegseth as the Secretary of Defense. He's been making the rounds, meeting with senators, and appears to have shored up a lot of Republican support. The chairman and ranking member of the Senate Armed Services Committee have received the FBI background check, and if reports are correct, there's nothing momentous in the report. Now, I want to be clear. Hegseth's not going to get a single Democratic vote, and some, like Senator Hirono, have refused to meet with him. And that should tell the voters at Hawaii that she's more interested in politics than doing her job. And absent any new bombshells, Hegseth will probably be approved. And I don't think any Republicans will break ranks and vote no. Senator Reid, the ranking Democrat, is already in the initial part of the hearing today, said he doesn't think Hegseth's qualified. Now here's what I will say to that. If Harris had won and she had appointed Hegseth, just bear with me, then Reid would be telling everybody how great it was to have a military officer with combat experience in the position. It's all politics. There are two other nominees that are controversial. They're Kash Patel to head the FBI and Tulsi Gabbard to become the Director of National Intelligence. They're going to undergo tough questioning, but Patel will be confirmed, and I believe Gabbard will be as well, since she softened her stance on FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, particularly Section 702. The final controversial pick is Robert F. Kennedy at HHS. He's got some views that Democrats will attack, but in the end, they're not going to be able to block him. Senator Marco Rubio will sail through the Senate as the Secretary of State, and he's going to have a lot of Democrats voting for him. His record is clean, and his time at the Senate Foreign Relations Committee gives him some solid credentials. Kirstie Naomi is going to have her hearing for Homeland Security, and of course they'll bring up the fact in her book she reported that she shot a dog. But overall, she's qualified and she's going to get confirmed. The same for Doug Burgum at Interior. They're going to point out he's a billionaire, because that's going to be one of their main themes. You know, anybody that's a billionaire is obviously bad, except when they're Democratic billionaires. John Ratcliffe at CIA, he's going to get a lot of votes. Scott Bessent at Treasury, he's going to get passed. Pam Bondi, the AG from Florida, the former AG of Florida, is now the nominee for the Attorney General. They're going to question her, but she scares them because she's a good lawyer, she's been a prosecutor, a state attorney general, and she's qualified to hold the job. And that's what scares Democrats the most, having somebody over there that can actually do the job and do it right. Sean Duffy, former congressman, has been nominated for transportation. Now, once again, I go back to the fact that when they say somebody's not qualified, Pete Buttigieg had been a small-town mayor in South Bend, Indiana, and suddenly he's the Secretary of Transportation. What qualifications did he have? The last three I'm going to mention are Chris Wright at Energy. He's a strong backing of oil and gas production. Scott Turner at Housing, former NFL player, and Doug Collins, a former congressman from Georgia, over at VA. In the end, I believe all of these are going to get confirmed. There's been a lot of talk and chatter that maybe they ought to put one down, but once Matt Gaetz withdrew, he became the piñata that the Democrats were going to go after, and they no longer have him. So this has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. If you're on TikTok, I don't know what's going to happen to it, so go find me on YouTube.